It's Tuesday, April 2nd, 2013. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, ground floor.
Let's do this.
Oh yeah, and I guess we're back from PAX.
Hooray!
It's been a while.
Geeknights has returned. We are not a dead podcast like all those before
Mostly
us.
returned. I got back from PAX and went to work and everything was fine for like 2 days. And then I got sick. And it wasn't just the normal, like, oh, I'm sick after a con. I had influenza, like an actual flu.
Did you go to a doctor?
No, because there's no point. Unless they were going to give me a tube or something. There's nothing you do for a flu unless you're dying of it. I wasn't dying. I just had 103 fever.
That sounds like dying.
I've had worse fevers. This was easily the sickest I've been in about a decade. And today is the first day I'm not horribly ill. So I brought Scott over into the plague house to hopefully catch some plague and experience this the way I did.
I did call in sick today so that I could do laundry and play
It would thus be
XCOM.
ironic if you actually got sick.
That would be indeed, but that's okay. No, it's not. I don't want to get sick.
I hope none of your coworkers listen to this. Like, I thought Scott called in sick.
Whatever, they don't give a shit. I haven't been sick from work in like forever. I have 5 sick days. They reset in July. I'm gonna use them. I'll probably use another one till I go biking in June or something.
See, guys, this is why if you run a company, you're better off just giving your employees unlimited sick days.
That's right.
They don't feel obligated to use up the sick days you give them.
If I had unlimited sick days, I would have gone to work today because you don't want to be caught abusing the infinite sick day policy. But if you have a set number, it's like, well, that's how many days I'm going to be sick, minimum. If I'm legitimately sick longer than that, then, oh well, gonna get a doctor's note. What do you do?
No, then I'm coming to work anyway.
Also that, and getting all the other employees sick and ruining your company.
I guess you got nothing else to say?
Not until we get started.
We're started.
Oh, okay.
It's live. We're back.
Okay, sure. You want to do some news, I guess?
I don't know. I don't really have any news except for PAX.
What about PAX that we went to?
PAX is pretty great.
It was PAX East 2013.
More
our
importantly,
9th PAX?
It was our 22nd panel at a PAX.
Okay.
Which was kind of... We've done more
How
PAX
have we
panels
done 22 panels and 9 PAXs?
because we used to do 3 panels per PAX for several PAXs in a row.
All right, now we're doing 1.
Now
we did 2 this time.
We did 2, but they were in the little theater.
Yep.
But
The tabletop theater that needs to be renamed desperately. And
Kobold.
we're thinking Kobold Theater, but it might be something else. We don't know.
I can't come up with a name better than Kobold Theater. But yeah, we got to experience PAX from a very different perspective, too. Many of you know because we tweeted about it and talked about it, but we actually were enforcers this year. Me, Scott, and Emily. We were on the other side
Emily
of that
was an
rope.
enforcer last year. Also.
She was. She was a veteran. She has an extra pin beyond what I have.
Oh, no.
But we've seen the inner secrets of the enforcers, and we can reveal all their secrets to you now.
All the non-really exciting
You know what the secrets are?
secrets.
They're smart people who are allowed to act with their smartness, and they just do the right thing to make PAX happen. That's it. That's the secret.
Secret, all staff confident. The end. Well, staff 99% confident.
I did not meet an incompetent enforcer the
No,
entire time
I did not
was
meet
there.
an incompetent enforcer, but there were people who were mostly confident but had some amount of incompetence to them.
I believe all people have some amount of incompetence.
That's why I said.
I lost an episode of Geeknights to Ether one time.
That's why I said 99% confident.
You apparently didn't realize that you can change volumes and recordings of audio.
I do. I just too lazy to do so.
But yeah, PAX was the same as PAX always is. The expo hall was bigger. Tabletop seemed smaller, but it appears that it was actually slightly bigger.
Well, it's hard to tell, but they changed the shape of it, and I didn't count the chairs, so there's no way to know. But at least whether it was bigger or smaller, there was always somewhere to sit. At least, even when it was super full, there was like a chair here and a chair there.
Well, what's interesting
Not
is
like
that
a year ago it was 100% full. You cannot sit in there. You have to go to extra tabletop.
But the thing is, last year there was extra tabletop.
And this year there was not.
And now that extra tabletop was gone, and yet regular tabletop was not full the whole time, either there was more space in tabletop, which I don't think there actually was, 2, there was more space elsewhere in the con that people were tabletop gaming.
Seemed about the same.
3, less people were tabletopping.
I think that might be somewhat true. Let me tell you a story, right? So I'm enforcing, and I'm standing in the area between the expo hall and the tabletop, sort of near the line for, swag bags and such, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's an old dude, middle-aged dude, maybe 40, 50-something, and his son, who is way young.
Listeners, I just want to let you know, this is a story that you're going to be amazed by.
Yeah, maybe 8, 9 years old, something like that, right? And, the guy, I'm standing there, and what's happening in this area is the Mike and Jerry autograph signing, right? And there's a line. This dude asked me, hey, what's this line for? I'm like, oh, Mike and Jerry autograph signing, and pin trading also, right? And he's like, who are they? And I'm like, that's understandable, right? Not everyone who comes to PAX knows about Penny Arcade, right? Not everyone knows who Mike and Jerry are. And I'm like, oh, well.
Yeah, I mean, how many people go to anime cons and don't know who anime is?
Right, of course. So I'm like, oh, well, it's the Penny Arcade Expo. These guys, are the reason we're here. They made a webcomic called Penny Arcade about, 10 plus years ago, right? And, from that webcomic, they have created this convention, which is in 3 places in the world every year. And, you're at it right now. Welcome to our Penny Arcade, right? And he's like, first of all, I'm not going to exactly remember every word that was said, but here's the gist. Number 1. He didn't realize that PAX was Penny Arcade Expo. It took him like a few minutes to get that, right? He was like, oh, PAX Penny Arcade Expo. He didn't realize they were the same thing. He thought, right, that he was here with his kid for PAX. He thought the expo hall was PAX, physically speaking, and he thought that all this stuff going on behind that wall was another convention. So when I said Penny Arcade Expo, he thought I was talking about something that wasn't PAX, that was in the rest of the convention center, that wasn't the expo hall.
Now, while that seems crazy, in retrospect, thinking about it a little bit, you can understand why normal people would think that, because normal people who don't go to a lot of conventions or who only go to like New York Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con, Dragon Con, things like that, they expect conventions to pretty much be a gigantic expo hall and little else.
Right. It's like you go to the auto show, it's one big room, and that's it. So this guy bought tickets to PAX, came to PAX East, and if you think about it, you come to PAX East, there's an info booth, you go in the front door, and there's the expo hall, and there's walls and weird hallways to go to anything else. And you don't get your program and all that stuff that gives you information about the or the maps or anything unless you go beyond the expo hall to the baggy area behind it where the guy was. All right, so I pointed him obviously to go get a program, all right? And I told him, yeah, this entire building, even these hallways on the side that you don't see and in the back is all PAX. You have a badge to all of this. You're missing 90% of what's going on if you only stay in that room, etc. But I was talking about how, Penny Arcade it's a webcomic. And the last thing, the guy was like, yeah, I've never heard of Penny Arcade, the webcomic. I'm like, oh, well, when you go home, search for Penny Arcade, the webcomic. And he's like, oh, maybe my kid has heard of Penny Arcade, the webcomic. So I'm like, I'm going to go to the kid and I'm like, hey, have you heard of the webcomic Penny Arcade? And he says, I don't know. Apparently, he was failing at the English comprehension.
Little kids are like that.
Right. But he was like, he said to me, these are the exact words, is the webcomic Homestuck?
So few words.
To a yes or no question of, have you heard of Penny Arcade, the webcomic? He said, is that Homestuck? Well, no, Penny Arcade isn't Homestuck.
So few words
but
have so adequately expressed the youth of America coming up into this world as, is that Homestuck?
Yeah. It's like, no, Penny Arcade is not Homestuck. The letter A is not the letter B. Apples are not oranges.
I feel like we could turn that back into some sort of old, the old, is this Battletoads memes? Like, is this Homestuck?
Yeah. I asked Robert Koo, if there was a way that we can better serve these people. And he said he didn't seem too worried about it. He's like, yeah, people like that come to the convention, whatever. We have maps. It's up to them. And I was like, and the thing is, you can't hand out, the one thing you could think of would be to hand out the programs in the front, but there's nowhere to do that. There's no space.
Yep, there's not enough space to line people up inside.
And I don't think you could put the expo hall, you could put the queue room closer to the front of the con and move the expo hall back, right? But then that sort of ruins that whole effect of looking in the window and seeing the expo hall. I don't know.
I don't think there's any good way around it, but all that really does is solidify that point that
It's
we've
not
talked
like
about.
if you go to PAX Prime, right? That shit's a maze.
But we've talked about this over and over and over again on Geeknights. There are just people who are really into something who somehow are so off the radar. It's like they have a hobby that they've never Googled for. They've never looked up on the internet with any other search engine.
They're going to this PAX thing, but they didn't bother to look up anything about this thing they're going to.
They seem to know it's about video games.
They somehow bought tickets online in advance.
Despite the fact that it sold out pretty quick.
Yeah. They somehow got to go to it. Maybe they read about it in the Boston newspaper or something. I don't know.
But just how there are so many nerds who are really nerdy about something, yet seem to just never take it upon themselves to learn more about the thing.
Whatever.
Maybe we just need to brand all those things as Homestuck.
So the only other thing I want to say about PAX,
PAX is like the Homestuck of video games.
Sure, is in the X, things I saw at PAX that were cool. I was enforcing a lot and doing panels a lot, so I didn't see too many cool things.
Yeah, I walked through the expo hall once on my own because I never met up with you when you were walking through on your own.
I told you I was at the Oni booth in the back right with George, and you didn't.
I was walking over there, and then by the time I got there, you guys were gone.
I waited there for like 5-10 minutes. You didn't show up. Anyway, I walked around that expo hall, and the one thing in the expo hall that really stood out that I remember that I'm going to spend money for sure is this game called Shovel Knight. So Shovel Knight, I think is coming out for PC, might be coming out for some other things. I know you can look it up online, see videos of it. Basically, it is a game that combines all the greatest aspects of all these games that I've already know and love. So you're a knight, and you have a shovel as your weapon, right? And you can dig with it. So it's a 2D platform game that looks like an NES game, and the level design is very much like Mega Man, and there are many Mega Man-esque enemies in it. So you're playing a lot like Mega Man. You can jump and you can shovel.
But the way your powers are, you're a little also like a Scrooge McDuck.
Well, okay, so there's a little bit of Scrooge McDuck in the things you can do with the shovel. For example, you can down stab onto a guy to bounce off of him, like a Scrooge McDuck. You can also down stab like a Link from Zelda 2, right? You can also use the shovel to reflect shots back at enemies, sort of like a Zelda 2 Link. You can also press up and attack to use a secondary weapon like a Castlevania, right? So it's like you have secrets in the levels like a Kirby's Adventure.
Wait, so Scott, it's a typical 8-bit throwback game.
But it's got all those aspects from all those things.
It's got Scott's best aspects.
All the best aspects from the best games combined into one, plus, right? The controls and the designs and the arts were all super perfect. Usually a lot of these games come out and they're a little flimsy in one way or another. This game wasn't even out yet. It was just like PAX demo, and already the controls were like dead on. It was so good.
How long did you play it?
For like 5 minutes,
all right.
10 minutes, something like that. Enough to like beat a whole level.
I'll believe it.
Yeah. So when you see Shovel Knight hitting Steam, buy that shit.
I was pretty excited about, not that I knew about this game, but I kind of just ignored it. Like it was in the file of games I planned to play at some point, but that Don't Starve that people were talking about.
I've heard of that.
And I looked at it.
What's
looked
it
cool.
about?
You really don't know anything about it?
I've heard there's a game called Don't Starve.
So the deal
is it a scary game, I think?
You're a dude by yourself in a world, and you have to not starve. So, I don't know, start fucking farming before you die.
Okay.
Grab some, think of it as like an adventure game, but with a little bit of this sort of Minecraft, like go and get things to do things with and build your little settlement. And it sounds really fun. And now that I've actually seen it and poked at it a little bit, it looks really fun too. So I think I'm going to move it up in my queue.
Bargo, bargo, bargo. Bargo. Bargo, bargo.
But the game I'm the most excited about that I saw that was new to me is the Ducktales remake.
Oh, yeah, it was new to everybody.
Because Ducktales, what's funny is just before PAX, I was showing some people who'd never heard of it the DuckTales NES game in our apartment.
Just before PAX, I happened to have been playing it on my NES emulator on my DS before going to bed. And that game is balls hard.
Serendipity. That game is, I beat it as a kid many times.
Game is balls hard.
I would be hard
I was
pressed to
dying
beat
in
it
like
today.
level 2. I was just like, ah.
Wait, level 2? What order do you do the levels in, Scott? It's like Mega Man. It's very important.
Well, the first level you don't have a choice, right? It's
No.
just the side scrolly forest level with the monkeys. Right?
What? No, you can pick whatever level you want.
What? I pushed start and I was in that monkey level.
That is not how that game works.
I gotta go back and check.
You just pick a place and go to. Are you sure you're not referring to DuckTales 2?
Maybe I played the wrong one. I was definitely Scrooge McDuck using the pogo stick cane. Okay, so apparently I just pushed start and went to the Amazon directly.
Scott, that game is burned into my memory.
Okay.
But
I didn't own it as a kid. I only played it like a few times.
I owned
at
it
some other
and
people's houses.
It amazes me that it's one of those games I could beat pretty handily as a kid that I have some surprising difficulty with rebeating today.
Yeah, Mega Man 2 I can beat today, but
I don't know. When was the last time you beat Mega Man 2?
You want to play it right now?
Let's see. Which one was Mega Man 2 or Bionic Commando first?
Bionic Commando 2 I think is a shorter game, right? I mean, let's
don't
go see
think
what
so.
the top scores are for for speed runs with, non-assisted for both those games, and we can see if they're roughly the same speed game.
That'll be our Omegathon.
And what we can do is, right, we can both do it, and then instead of just saying who is faster, we say who had a greater percentage overage versus the world record, right? So if I was 50% slower than the best at Mega Man 2, and you were 60% slower than the best at Bionic Commando, then, right, you're better at Bionic Commando than I am at Mega Man, right?
That could be interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, I mean, PAX was PAX. The concerts were the concerts. There was a new band at PAX that I actually wanted to see that I ended up not going to see. I was when they fight, something about fighting. I already forgot because everyone I talked to who saw them said that they weren't actually that good. So I'm kind
Okay.
of glad I didn't bother. They were supposed to be a Final Fantasy themed equivalent of the Proto Man.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they were described by many people to me, with the added bonus of really good rock ballad vocals. It turns out that's not exactly what they are. And everyone I talked to who told me to listen to them told me never mind.
Was it a Friday night concert or a
Friday
Saturday?
night.
Friday night, Those Who Fight.
Those Who Fight. So I did not hear them. I did not see them perform. But everyone who told me to see them later told me never mind.
Okay.
But I mean, everything else was the same. I mean, the concert was full.
Sure. MagFest, though. Machine Supremacy. PAX.
That's a whole different ballgame.
PAX. What are you going to do?
I wonder if there's going to be trouble at MagFest with that big a concert there. They don't have that big a venue for the concerts.
It's not going to be that big, right? It's going to be as big as any of the biggest concerts at MagFest.
But they've never toured in the U.S. ever, have they?
You think a zillion people are going to suddenly show up at MagFest for Machine Supremacy who have never gone to MagFest before?
A ticket to MagFest is not really out of line with a ticket to a major stadium concert, GA.
No, but it's not. They're not a major stadium group.
You never know. I
You
don't
think
know how
there's that many
popular
people
they are
in the
US.
U.S. who are going to go all the way to D.C. and get a hotel room just to see them?
They might.
They're not that popular.
We'll find out. I mean, there were a lot of people who were at that one Otakon just to see L'Arc-en-Ciel.
L'Arc-en-Ciel is a lot bigger than Machine Supremacy.
True, but how big are they in America? I mean, I'm not counting the crazy people who flew from Japan to see them here.
Anyway, we'll see.
But yeah, the only bad part of PAX, it was really sad, is the Omegathon finale for the first time.
I missed it for the
that
first
I've-
time. That's
Yeah.
really sad.
So it was great at first because it turned out it was Half-Life 1 Ricochet.
Sure.
So
That would have been a great game for.
yeah. So Scott couldn't see the Omegathon finale because
was
he was
enforcing.
enforcing. And I was enforcing, but I was enforcing main theater. I was like doing security at the front of the room.
So you were in there.
So I'm in there doing my thing, getting the crowd all situated. And our friend Ro walks up to me and says, "So I know that you're thinking, how are we going to prank Scott because he's not here?"
I even texted Ro, don't lie to me.
And I looked at her and said, "I've been trying to come up with the perfect game to lie to him for the last hour." And then we collaborated and we agreed that we came up with many possible ideas and we threw them all out. And eventually
What were
we
some of your
decided,
ideas?
cough drop. So Ro's first idea was NS2, and I was like, "No, that'd be
No.
way too obvious.
Not
It'd be too
that
hard
couldn't be a Megathon finale game.
unless they'd like primed them and taught them how to play ahead of time.
That would have been
and
so
set up
boring,
teams.
not suspenseful, not exciting, too hard to play. I would not believe that for a second.
And then we debated a little more, and we tried to come up with something. some old NES game or something. And Ro was like, Outlaw would be perfect, but it's only 2-player.
That's right.
And then eventually we realized...
You could have easily fooled me at PAX Prime by saying Outlaw. Easily. I would believe that. In fact, that should be the PAX Prime Omegathon finale.
It'd be great if someday you're enforcing it Prime and you miss the Omegathon finale and it is Outlaw and then you don't believe us.
Nah, then fuck me.
So eventually we realized that Half-Life 1 Ricochet is the best one because...
It did have a team mode.
It does have team mode. It's quick and easy to learn, easy to spectate.
It would have been great for spectating as people with using HLTV as people were falling off to their deaths and getting decapitated and getting the triple shot. And
It's the kind of game that someone with no experience could play very well.
As long as you know how to control an FPS by with the mouse and keyboard, basically, you can play that game because there's only 2 attack buttons and that's it. There's no jump. You just you guess you can jump, but you don't want to.
Players would learn together. Like everything would work out. It'd be a perfect game. Also, it's just weird enough to where it would be like the crazy Omegathon finale. And, of course, Ricochet is very near and dear to me and Scott's hearts.
It would make a great Omegathon finale at either Omegathon. Just a straight-up duel. They could do best of 5 or whatever and be awesome.
So what we agreed to do, we coordinated this shit, is that we were going to text Scott simultaneously when they actually announced it. That way we would be in sync.
You were in sync.
And then we each wanted to tweet or text or tweet at him a little bit later some details from the game to see how long we could keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my favorite moment was I texted you and I said, man, no one's gotten a headshot yet. Triple shot is ruling. And you responded something like, well, obviously.
Yeah, right? It takes less skill to hit someone with a triple shot, especially with the bouncing off the walls. That's going to get some hits from people who aren't paying attention in all directions. And if you've never played before, you probably don't know about the right-click chainsaw shot. And it's hard to hit with, even if you know how to use it.
So I was very proud of the horrible prank we played on Scott.
It fooled me for about a minute because the other enforcers in my area got correct information from other people.
Well, it was a little longer than a minute because I have the timeline of the texts to and from.
It was a matter of minutes, and I was just like...
Yeah, minutes, but not minutes.
And I was also not trusting. I was only like 75% fooled, not 100% fooled. If I was 100% fooled, why would I have been asking other enforcers to confirm, right?
Maybe you weren't. Maybe you were just like, oh man, Ricochet.
It was indeed, though, very plausible and a very good choice, which is why, I had, it was like, going with it until I had to ask somebody.
I was proud of that. We did our due diligence in pranking, but the actual Omegathon was Space Team. Now, Space Team actually was a pretty good Omegathon. Like, it was a good idea.
It could be, yeah.
When it worked, it was actually really funny to watch, especially the way they did it.
How did they get the video on the screens?
They had people holding HD cameras over everyone's heads like this.
They didn't use the video out from iPhones?
No.
That sucks.
They talked about different ways to do it.
They could have gotten, if they're going to spend money, they could have gotten those particular Android phones. It's on Android, right? Or is it iPhone only?
I think it's iPhone only.
Well, iPhone, you could get the video out cable, right?
That wouldn't have worked out so well.
You could get it. Or,
no, seeing them actually touching the screens kind of matters to the drama.
Okay.
And also seeing them doing the things like flip it over, twist it around, all that stuff, shake it. So they had HD cameras like over everyone's shoulders, and the 2 Omeganauts had to pick teammates from the Penny Arcade crew.
See, I'm not a fan of this. This seems to have been happening in recent Omegathons where, it's the Omegathon at PAX East is 2 versus 2. Find a game that's 2 versus 2. If it's 4 versus 4 and you've got to pick people for your team, now whether you go to Germany or not, it doesn't lie solely in your and your partner's hands. It lies in the hands of these other people that don't care because they don't get to go to Germany if they win or lose. I mean, not they're not going to try to win, but still, it should always be, if you want to make it 2 versus 2, make it a 2 versus 2 game, end of story.
Now, see, I disagree.
Crokinole was so perfect.
I disagree because the primary purpose of the Omegathon seems to be to entertain the crowd.
Yeah, that is definitely very important for the Omegathon. The game must entertain the crowd. However,
also
you cannot forget that those people up there are battling for a significant prize.
Yeah, but at the same time, what's funny is that so I was actually at the Jenga, the pre-Omegathon finale, And that was great to watch.
They've done that before, but yeah, it's always good.
Every year they seem to add a complication. Like this year they taped the people together in these really awkward ways and then made them do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point where one of the teams, like they were stuck. They touched a piece, so they had to pull it, but there was no way they could pull it without knocking the whole thing down. But they had unlimited time. So they kept going for it. And they kept going for it. And he's like, Wika, Wika, Wika. Oh, Wika, 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 Wika. Wika, Wika, Wika. This goes on for several minutes.
This is the giant Jenga set too, right?
Giant Jenga.
It's huge.
And Mike's like, come on, you can do it. The crowd's with you. And then as it keeps going on, eventually
if
the
I
crowd...
touched a piece that I knew was impossible to remove from the Jenga, but was therefore forced to remove that piece, losing the Jenga, instead of trying to remove the piece, first I would give it a minimum effort to see if there was maybe a possibility.
Rage quit?
As soon as there was no possibility, I would just like jump into the Jenga or kick it or
So Scott,
dive
apparently,
head first into it.
I've never seen the Jengas until now. There's a long tradition of the losing team being one who actually does exactly that.
Right.
Losing style.
That's right.
But no, they went for it.
But body check it.
They started losing the crowd, and at one point, the crowd just starts chanting physics, 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 and then they started stomping their feet to try to make it just fall on its own.
Yeah.
It was pretty great.
That's pretty great.
A bunch of people in the audience coordinated and went 1, 2, 3, and all jumped at the same time.
Yeah. They should do that not just to get those people to lose, but they should do that when like the winners are up there doing their normal Jenga.
That's no good.
Just everyone constantly jump up and down.
That might be what happened during the Omegathon finale, for all we know.
Hey.
Could just be a troller.
Sure.
But the funny part was Mike was pretty much on with the quips the entire time. And at one point, he's like, you know, guys, you could just buy a ticket to Germany. Might be faster.
Those guys have been practicing that quippery for basically over a decade.
Well, it shows now, like when in Strip
Have you been
Search?
watching Strip Search?
Oh my God.
The thing is,
Mike and Jerry, I salute you.
Yeah, it's like, artists, 30 minutes is less time than what you have. You have 40 minutes. It's like they come up with a joke like that. And that's Mike's favorite thing to do is come up with a clever joke and reuse that joke over and over again, maybe tweaking it slightly so the mega tie, mega T, mega toe, over and over again. That's his favorite thing.
So Scott,
There was even a podcast once, like a few years ago, where he like did some like word joke and he did the word joke again with a different word, but it's the same joke. And he's like, he said, I remember, yeah, when I find a joke like that, I just latch onto it, and it's never unfunny. You just keep using it over and over again.
So anyway, the Omegathon finale, Space Team, it was going to work out fine. And the first round went great. And then there were some network issues. And then there kept being network issues. And eventually, they just had to call it, and all the Omeganauts get to go to Germany.
Who's going to pay for that?
Penny Arcade?
Sure.
They got money. Now,
okay.
What's sad is that it was super exciting up to that point. Like, they finally got a good run in. Like, one team got all the way to, like, the 6th or 8th. I forget what zone they got to. And the game didn't crash. They died legit. So the other team had to either get past them or it was over. So the other team goes, and we're already at the end now. The other team gets to the same zone they were in, and then the game breaks. So, you might think, and I thought this at first too, maybe they didn't test it fully. Maybe they didn't test it with everyone in the room. I have verified with everyone who knows they tested this more than any of us could have dreamed of testing it.
Yep.
They tested it.
I just never See, I wouldn't even bother testing it. I would have ruled it right out. No Wi-Fi, no internet needed for anything ever in any event I do at a live thing ever because it cannot be trusted.
But they seriously, they tested it behind the stage. Imagine how nervous they were because they can't let anyone in on, what it might be. I mean, it'd be suspicious if you see a bunch of people playing Space Team just all over the place who are on the PA staff, behind the scenes. But they tested it during the concerts. They tested it apparently on stage when the crowd was already in for the Omegathon, 10 minutes before go live. And everything was fine. It only failed in the actual Omegathon. Even after they asked people, and Koo was like, yeah, this is ghetto, I know, but whatever, to go into airplane mode. It still didn't help.
Nope. Who knows what that was causing it?
Yeah, it's some sort of Wi-Fi disturbance of some kind. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, Some people I heard were saying, why didn't you use Bluetooth? Like that was apparently an alternative that might have worked.
From what I've been told, that was considered and not viable.
I don't know. All I'm saying is I would never do anything. Like, I wouldn't even bother being like, testing the Wi-Fi, it works. Okay, let's do it. I would be like, no, we are never going to do anything that requires Wi-Fi or internet because we cannot trust it. End of story. Maybe if I had like a dedicated like internet line coming in, like a T1 that I rented and tested and had like Ethernet cables going to it, and I was like, visiting web pages on it, and I'm like, okay, we can use this, right?
I would trust internet just fine. What I'd do is cut off attendee access to the internet before.
Or I would trust a wired LAN game as well, obviously, right? That's fine.
But anyway, things of the day.
So, you've seen a lot of performances on the internet of music. This is not a new thing. It is super old. In fact, this particular video is from 2010. I just didn't see it until today because, well, not even today, like a couple days ago. What this is a guy named James Hill. The video was uploaded by Gordon Mayer on YouTube. And this is at the Dusty Springs Seattle Uke Fest. He's playing a ukulele. And he is playing the song Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. And the way this guy plays this ukulele, it is like he is playing 5 or 6 instruments simultaneously, even though it's only one instrument. It is pretty impressive. It's worth seeing if you haven't seen it. It's probably, even I, who have seen almost everything on the internet, in reality, have only probably seen 90% of things on the internet. This is one of those 10% of things that, comes around again, and it's like, I'm seeing it for the first time when everyone else is seeing it for the second time. But whatever, now you can remove this from your 10% and move up to 91% of internet being seen.
So this, what I have for you, my thing of the day, winter's over. It's a winter wrap-up, if you will. This is a fan-made, sort of stop-motion, live-action.
It's not stop motion, it's live motion.
Well, you can argue that it's just incredibly high frame rate stop motion.
No, it's not. It's regular videoing.
This is a highly accurate representation of the winter wrap-up scene from My Little Pony, done with real-life models. And it's just extremely well done and very charming to watch.
It's charming, I'll give you that.
There's something, it warmed the cockles of my heart. Or maybe that's my fever coming back.
It does have 750,000 views almost.
Yeah, that says something.
It says something, all right. Bargle.
In the meta moment, the book club book, which you still haven't put on the website, is...
Oh, I will do that when I get home. It is The Player of Games by Ian M. Banks. It is the most Geeknights a book can possibly be. I started reading it, and then I haven't read it again in a little while because of PAX and stuff, but I'm going to continue reading it very soon. I think Emily's actually read more than either of us.
Yeah, because she borrowed my Kindle, and she's been reading it, so I got to borrow it back.
I thought she had her own Kindle.
Yeah, but I bought the book. I can't just give it to her.
Oh, you bought it. See, this is why I don't buy Kindle books ever with the DRMs.
See, we both buy books, but then we just trade Kindles periodically.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway.
I don't know. I don't pirate everything because I got money.
No, yeah, I got money too, but I'm still not going to buy a DRM book. If they were selling a DRM free book, I'd probably buy that.
So you wouldn't buy a DRM book for like $2?
No.
But you'd pay, how much would you pay for the paperback of that book?
Whatever it costs on Amazon.
What if it's like $20?
No, I probably wouldn't just buy it at all then.
No.
I'm not going to pay $20 for a paperback, you crazy? Paying the reasonable paperback price.
But yeah, our next conventions are Kineticon,
Anime Boston,
and Anime Boston
in May. This weekend is the Mocha Festival in New York City. You should go to that.
We'll be there Saturday hanging out, looking at comics, buying comics. I think I spend more money at Mocha than any other convention
It's the only convention that has anything I want to buy, really, except PAX t-shirts at PAX.
I guess I'll spend more getting to PAX East, but that's a different expense altogether.
Different situation, right?
Kineticon,
spend more on food at Anime Boston.
And Kineticon, we're basically in the process of scheduling the con, but if you haven't submitted a panel yet and you really want to submit, and your submission's really, really good, you might still make it in.
Yep.
In particular, we got fewer anime submissions than we've ever gotten.
So if you submit a crappy anime panel, it's actually likely to get accepted because we need anime. It's a multi-genre convention. We want to, give time to all genres roughly equally or fairly. So any genres that are underrepresented or medias or geekeries that are underrepresented are more likely to get their panels accepted.
What's interesting, though, is that for 3 years now, the number of anime panels submitted has dropped precipitously every year.
And we keep trying to solicit people to come do some panels, Mike Toole. But they don't.
And the trend, it amazes me the trend has continued. So I am now not surprised when certain people I know at anime cons are complaining that they don't get any panel submissions.
Nah.
There might just be a drying up in general of anime con content.
There may be.
It's hard to say.
Maybe. There's not much left to say about anime, or the people who have things to say don't have things to say about anime, or the people who have things to say about anime are few and far between.
Well, I mean, we're doing
Or they've already said everything they had to say, and there's not really much new to say.
We're doing 5 panels in Anime Boston. We could have done more, but we didn't want to.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do more than that. We still got to do the really hard one, though.
Yeah, let's start on that before July.
Let's divide up before July, the cons in May.
But anyway, at PAX, we played a game that looked like, I looked at it and it looked amazing. It looked like exactly the kind of game that's totally my jam. A bunch of our friends were playing it and they all said, this game is great. You've got to play it. Including some of them who are not known for their love of complicated, boring German games.
Yep. So I played this game, actually. I don't think Rim was playing the time I was playing, right?
I played in one game that didn't finish after you already knew something about the game. And then I played another game of it the next day with only fast people.
Right.
That also did not finish.
Basically, let's just get to the point, right? I played this game and we didn't finish, but I thought that we didn't finish because some of the people we're playing with were new. I was actually new to it as well. He's new to this game, even though I was playing quickly. And they were playing slowly. So I was like, all right, we're just going to end this now because it's too late. We'll play this again another time with only fast people, and it'll be awesome because so far everything in this game is super fun and awesome. So then we came back, and it was the day after PAX. Only awesome people were left. People who were fast and awesome at board games. And we played this game, and it took for fucking ever. This game is so goddamn slow, even though it's fun.
God, my opinion of this game went from this is gonna be one of my favorite board games.
That you said you're gonna go home and buy it.
I almost bought it that night. I just fell asleep before I remembered to in the hotel room.
Yep.
I'm so glad I didn't buy this game.
So glad. So really, the game is called Ground Floor. Did we mention that already?
Ground Floor is a game that is it's a pseudo simulation of a company growing, and you'll add floors to your building and specialize out your building and hire workers and then distribute those workers around the board doing stuff for you.
Yeah, it's
but not in a normal traditional worker placement way, but more like you have an abstraction of you add an employee has 3 time markers that designate what they're doing with their time.
Yeah. So you spend these time markers to choose, all around the board and all the different places. And each different place on the board that you can put workers is basically like a game in and of itself. So it's like on this big board, there's a bunch of little tiny games, and you can buy in to play those games by spending your 2 different currencies, the money and the information currencies, and your time markers into those games to play them. And of course, if you play and do well at those games, you get more resources out of them. And the only game that really matters is the final game on the board, which is the construction game, which allows you to build new floors in your building and new windows for your building so that you can get victory points. You can also get victory points by upgrading things on your own card to make your games more efficient, but that's pretty minor. It's really all about playing a bunch of tiny games with your little pieces in order to get resources to get, victory points in the construction game. So,
yep. Now it's interesting that the game has so many structures, yet actual victory points are relatively few and far between and are really only in this sort of construction phase. Like, adding floors and adding improvements to your building gets you a few victory points. There's a few other ways.
It also
to get
makes it
victory
easier
points.
to get more victory points because those added floors to your building give you vast powers greater than any other power available in the game.
But that there's such complexity in the game before that point and so little complexity there at the end was kind of surprising. It wasn't what I usually expect from games.
Yeah, well, I think the reason the complexity drains out of the game is because as you get those improvements to your building, you actually can now ignore some of the other games, right? So if you were to get, say, in the third phase of the game, the accounting floor, which I really wanted, but we didn't get to the third phase because it was too long.
Yeah, we didn't even get to the third phase.
Right, you can use that accounting floor to just get cash money, which means you can now ignore pretty much the factory retail part of the game, which is usually the best way to get cash. Because you now have your own supply of cash that all you do is just spend some workers and get cash directly. So screw that. All right. There was also other things that like get you add information to your income so you can get tons of folders all the time. You can now, if you get that, you can now ignore the folder getting game, except when it's really obvious and easy to get a ton of folders out of it. So in that later game, you're pretty much just rushing to construct very quickly and ignoring most of the other bits except for the marketing bit, which you can't ignore at all the whole game.
Now, the way the game works fundamentally is you've got your little board with, your building on it. It's got this cute little thing where as you add floors, they like rise up out of the top of your board. Like the production values are super high quality. But you'll have your CEO and you choose to hire or not hire employees. And the cost of hiring depends on the current economy and how many other people hired. And that's a trend in the entire game, that things you do depend heavily on who did it before you. Sometimes it's affected by who does it after you, and it's affected by the economy, which has its own sort. It's like a weather in the game that changes. Like it's a recession, now it's stable, boom times, depression, it jumps around.
Yeah, but you can always see what's coming, so it's not like you can get surprised and screwed by luck. It's like you knew.
You can only see a little bit into the future.
Yeah, you can see one into the future, which is pretty much enough to plan a turn ahead, right? Which is all you really need to plan, right? It's like, next turn's going to be a recession, money's going to be tight, get money now during the boom times.
So the problem with this game, and I want to talk about the problems rather than getting into more detail about how to play, because the rules are very difficult to follow. We were taught to play by one group of people, and as a result, we messed up like 4 different parts of the game because they didn't understand that part of the rules.
Yep.
Rereading the rules and playing again, those parts of the game were still messed up, but in different ways.
Yeah, it's like I reread the rules to how to play the marketing game like 3 or 4 times, and I read something different each time because different parts of the rule book, the rules for it were spread out over different parts instead of all concentrated in one, direct area. And the flow was way out of whack. And we got it wrong a bunch of different ways, a bunch of different times before getting it right.
Yeah, the fact that we couldn't get the rules straight in repeated play and repeated rereadings of the rules bothered me because I cannot think of a game that has given us that much trouble that we didn't just out of hand dismiss.
And remember, this is all pros playing this game.
Hellas was the last game where I had this level of rules.
Well, the problem with Hellas is that the rules were just wrong, right? The rules didn't fully explain themselves. You had to go get errata online or something to explain it.
But this game, they were theoretically resolvable, but the fact that all of us smart super gamer people reading the rules together over and over again had trouble agreeing on what the rules said.
Yeah, it's like the rules did have everything written down in there somewhere, but every time we reread it, we found something different that re-explained or, no, we actually were doing that wrong, and then we're doing a little more right this time, but we're doing a little... And it's like, because the main problem is you do things in different orders, and the order matters a lot. And sometimes the order, it's just like popularity order, okay? But it also matters on like, well, the popularity just changed. So do we change the order now? And do we do it in the order of this, do we do broadcast, then print, then networking? Or do we do, this person in all 3 and then this person in all 3?
Now, this is the crux of the problem. It wouldn't be so bad if it were just that the rules were confusing, but the game was fine. The problem lies in the fact that while the rules are confusing, the actual mechanics the rules are describing are extremely non-intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, if you try to intuit how it should go, you're gonna get it wrong.
Yep.
But if you try to read the rules and figure it out,
you'll
have a hell of a time getting it right because it's hard to grok what the rules are saying because they don't match with what you'd expect.
I feel like this game could work. It's one of those ones where obviously it could work if it was a video game because that makes everything faster, right? But even then, it's not a fast game. Every round, you've got to do all this stuff, right? It took us like 2 hours to get halfway through the game. It's gonna be like a 4-hour motherfucker with, even people playing on a computer. Maybe it's gonna be 3 hours. You could just play Eclipse instead, right?
As I was gonna say, but Raymond Scott, you play 4 and 5 hour games all the time, and yes, that is true. But in a game of Eclipse, my brain is engaged the entire time, and I feel this deep sense of satisfaction about the decisions I'm making. In this game, I was never satisfied with the decision I was making because I had almost no directional heuristic whatsoever to tell me if what I was doing was going to help me win, and if not, what I could do differently that would be better.
It's like when you play Eclipse for 4 hours, you're getting your 4 hours worth. Your 4 hours is packed with Eclipse. It's a full meal the whole time. This is like eating snacks for 4 hours, waiting for dinner. It's like, dude, I could have just eaten this. It feels like a lighter game than it is. The mechanically, it feels like a Euro game. More like a Puerto Rico. It should take 90 minutes. But it just drags and drags, but you're not doing enough stuff that it feels like it should be that long. So very unsatisfying, even though I guess, mechanically speaking, if you follow the rules and you're willing to sit there for that long, it's not really that bad. It's actually pretty good.
Now, I worry that it is still bad. And the reason I worry that it's bad is that having played through it and tried to figure it out, I realized that most of the game is not very complex, and the decisions are usually pretty obvious and direct.
There are many obvious decisions.
So, what determines who's doing well? It seems to come down to the advertising agency and the quote-unquote popularity metric in the game. And this is where the game just fails me.
It's also the part where the rules are fucked up.
The metric there has the same problem that Viva Java game had. In fact, I would say that this game and Viva Java share many of the same problems. This game uses a mechanic where you have a slider, a metric of popularity, and you put your little color token on it to show you how popular you are. And you'll move up by moving your token steps to the right. But because this is not granular enough, you'll almost always end up being on top of other people. There'll be 3 or 4 players stacked on one spot at any given time. The precedence order of how that tie is resolved is confusing, counterintuitive. I would argue the opposite of what I would expect from historical games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can sort of understand, right? Let's say we're both at popularity 1 and you're on top of me. So you're more popular because you're on top of me.
All right, that makes sense on an intuitive level.
Okay, so you gain 3 popularity, right? Then I gain 3. Well, you would think, on the one hand, you gain the popularity first, which means you're better than me, right? Therefore, you should be more popular than me. But because I moved second physically, my token is now on top of yours, and now I'm more popular, which makes sense in a different way, in that, someone who's catching up, it's a slight, we know there's no catch-up mechanism, right? But it's a slight catch-up kind of thing. Like, the guy who got away first. Well,
it's a catch-up mechanism in that it narrows the playing field between percentage chance of victory and failure.
You got the benefit of going ahead first because you went ahead first, whereas I'm coming up from behind. So now you have to, use that benefit you got from going early to keep getting away from me.
But game designers take note. That just becomes an extremely annoying heuristic for people to actually deal with if they're trying to win your game, because it's very counterintuitive in practice. Never use the mechanic of getting to the point second makes you the winner of the tie as a catch-up mechanism. Never do that. I've decided, having run into a few games that have done it only recently. I've never run into this before. It only seems like these recent games are doing
I think
this.
A better idea would have been to have the popularity just be, popularity points, right? And people would just have these points and there'd be some number. And, instead of having a scale from what does the scale go from 1 to 10 or something?
It only goes up to 9.
Yeah. Let it be just from 0 to a lot, 0 to 100. So everyone has a very, a much more granular scale.
This and Viva Java both had that problem. The scale they use for this mechanism of determining who gets to go first in different areas is just not granular enough. And
or in another way you could think about it is that it's too granular. If you think about Kalis, the turn order, there's 5 players, there's 5 spots. They're always in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exactly. There's no one's on top of anyone or anything like that. There's an exact way to determine that order precisely. Power grid, what's the turn order? There's this number, you just line up the people in specific order. No one's tied in the turn order.
So I think, having read through this and just played the game, I think the reason that this advertising agency that determines your popularity is so confusing, because we're just talking about the popularity points.
This is
not
one,
all the bullshit around them. The fact that they decline and you lose popularity every turn.
Yeah,
regardless.
remember, this is a game that has like 7 tiny games in it, and this popularity thing is just one of those games.
Never mind the
that
fact
affects all the other games.
Even getting popularity, you have to put guys onto this advertising agency and then populate them into one of 3 things that score popularity in a really extra doubly non-intuitive manner.
Yeah, it's like you got to put your guys in here, then once they're in there in the holding area, then they can go into the actual game.
But some abilities let you go right into one of these areas early, but then you lose a bonus and it gets complicated. But I think that
it costs less resources.
That complicated bullshit is all there to obfuscate the fact that the rest of the game is pretty brain dead.
Yeah.
That
it's like when you're going in the factory, it's like the decision what to do in the factory is pretty simple, right? The warehouse is buy a box there if it's the good way to get a box instead of using the assembly, right?
And if it's too expensive, just buy the box from your own building instead.
Yeah, the folder game is pretty much just like, if you need folders, you can get a whole bunch of them here if you know, and see if you're going to give that other person folders, whatever, right?
Yeah, it always fills up. Who cares?
And the construction is get in there first if you care about somebody taking a specific building you want to buy. If not, just get in there if you can afford it, because that's victory points. You want to get those as soon as possible.
Yeah, and don't worry about not getting in, because you have like 1,000 actions.
Yeah, there's like this. That's the real problem, right? Imagine if you're playing Agricola, instead of having 5 family members, each family member had like 5 units of work each day. So you had 25 different workers, and there were like 50 jobs, and you could, you put all your guys in all different jobs. That's why the game takes forever. They really should have abstracted more of this stuff to make it less granular overall. And I think you could have had a good game there.
Well, that's one of the reasons.
Because the simulation of company does sort of work out.
Oh, the game was super fun, and this is the problem. The game is super fun in the first couple of turns until people have enough actions to actually use the advertising agency. And then the game bogs down.
And that's the other reason it bogs down, is because advertising is the only thing you can really do for free. So at the end of your turn, when you have all these extra time markers / worker tokens, and you have nothing else to do with them, you just dump them all in there for free, basically. And then
but you
it gets
still got to
crazy.
follow the turn order and go around procedurally, because depending on what I do, other people might do something different, and it
Yep.
it ends up being really unsatisfying.
Very.
Now, I really think if you fix the advertising agency, there's no game there, and that's the problem.
What you could do is you could make the advertising agency the whole game. Just get
But
rid
the
of the rest.
advertising agency is super unfun, because not only is it non-intuitive, and is the popularity game just non-granular and, annoying and difficult to figure out, it also requires a large amount of procedural calculation in the place of the players to figure out what to do with every one of their actions.
And the thing is, most of the time I was calculating, I actually not sure if this was something clever the game designers did or not, is I would be like, okay, if I put my guy into, networking directly, I'll get this. Well, if I pay this to get him into networking, then I'll get 2 guys in there. So if I do that, I'll actually just be losing $1 because I could just put 2 guys in there directly.
But
rather than spending $1 and a folder and 1 guy to get 2 guys in, I can just spend 2 guys to get 2 guys in.
But the point of paying the $1 is that you might go into print instead.
Right, and I calculated all these different possibilities every turn, and they all turned out to be equal, except for a few where I would just lose $1 for no reason.
See, now they're equal in a vacuum, but the problem is you get bonus popularity.
They were equal in terms of the number of popularity points I would would have received.
But where you also take into account the fact that whoever has the most tokens in each one of those areas also gets bonus popularity.
I was, at least in those specific scenarios, right, that I was in. I would basically have gained the same whether I put 2 workers directly into networking, one guy into the
okay,
advertising.
Scott, so
and
would
then
you have gained the same effectively if you would land on the same space as someone else and they were in print, but you were in broadcast instead of networking?
I couldn't figure that out because the rules were all blah.
That's the part that's the problem. Even if I figure out that if I do this is my optimal way to get
I'll
to
get the
popularity.
same number of popularity points is what I calculated, but I didn't calculate whether I would land there second or third or first, thus determining my actual popularity order.
And in general, some parts of the board, it's a benefit to be the first one in. In some parts of the board, it's the benefit to be the last one in. And the game just doesn't take that into account very well.
Nope.
So I don't know what I can say about this game other than that I kind of hate it.
Yeah. I don't know if I hate the game, but I'm definitely not going to play it again.
I hate it because I enjoyed it so much. And then after the first third, I realized that the game is going to take 4 hours and just going to be increasingly tedious.
Yeah, I don't hate it, but I'm definitely never going to play it again. Apparently, this game was part of a Kickstarter where you got 2 similarly themed games from the same designer. The other game that came with this is Skyline, which is sort of a nice Yahtzee. I kind of like it.
Skyline's actually pretty fun.
Yeah, it's a Yahtzee. You roll dice, you re-roll the one, but there's a little different rules to it. You're trying to build buildings instead of matching particular slots on your Yahtzee card. You can roll different kinds of dice. If you're looking for a Yahtzee type of game and you don't
roll through the ages,
you can play Roll Through the Ages or you can play Skyline. They're both better than Yahtzee and they're pretty much, fill that same niche or same role. Ha ha ha.
Thing is, I thought about buying Skyline, but it's $30.
Fuck that. It's not
$30 for what amounts to
a pile of dice.
Yeah.
And some cards.
For that, you might as well just play Yahtzee.
Yeah, or Roll Through how much is Roll Through the Ages?
I don't know.
Check it.
Roll Through the Ages is $30.
Okay, well, neither of those.
Wait, no, that's Roll Through the Ages Bronze Age.
Is it an expansion?
I don't see anything but Roll Through the Ages.
Oh, no, that is
Age.
Roll Through the Ages. That is it. Yeah,
the Bronze Age.
Yeah, it says the Bronze Age on it.
I haven't played this game in almost 2 years, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, don't spend $30 for a Yahtzee clone that's crook slightly so.
Yeah.
With a different theme.
But it's just, this game is, try it if you have some, don't buy it. Don't buy this game by any means.
No.
But find someone else who has it or pick it up in a tabletop library, get someone to teach you how to play it, and play the first few rounds. You'll see what we mean. It's super fun. Until you get about 3 rounds in.
And everyone's got a bunch of employees and way too many time markers.
And also, that's when someone's like, you know what? I want to up my popularity. And then everyone's got to start playing that popularity game. That becomes the whole game. It's non-intuitive and non-fun. The game requires so much calculation on the player's parts to have any chance of doing better than other players and winning. And that part, and all the other rest of the game, is just completely obvious brain-dead decisions 99% of the time.
If you want to play a game that consists of a bunch of separate, smaller games that tie into each other, just play Power Grid. Right? Don't play this.
Yeah. And if you want to play a good worker placement game that isn't Agricola, just play Kalis.
You can also play, I guess, Le Havre is out there. There's a lot of them.
I like Le Havre okay, but I don't like it that much.
Yeah, I've only played it like once. I don't know if
I played it twice. I own it. We can play it again.
I own it.
I thought I owned it.
No,
I bought Aura et Labora.
Which is also, maybe we could play that too.
Yeah.
I haven't played those other ones enough to know if I like them more or less than...
It's hard to say, because as much as I like them when I play them, whenever I think back to Kalis, I forget how much I actually really like Kalis.
Kalis is really good.
Yeah, I feel like I could play
French
Kalis
castle.
again. It's all about the castle. 20 cubes in the castle.
That's right. Except that one guy beat us with the gold freaking jeweler.
Yeah, that was a closely run affair, though. If I'd gotten a couple more stone, I would have beaten him.
Yeah.
Plus, he pretty much golded in a vacuum, and we ignored him.
All right.
Scoffed at him, in fact.
Let's end this show with just by saying Netrunner is still the best gameplay Netrunner.
Netrunner is a pretty good game. Scott's been playing XCOM, so we'll probably talk about XCOM in an upcoming
I'm not playing
Geeknights.
XCOM. That doesn't begin with the letter N. I'm not playing that.
All right,
I only play
Scott's been
games that begin
playing-
with the letter N.
Scott's been playing you don't count the when you're cataloging a game in the title of a game.
I am playing a game called Natural Selection 2 and a game called Netrunner.
You're playing
and a game
the new XCOM.
No,
that starts
I'm
with
playing Enemy Unknown. Begins with the sound N. Enemy.
We probably won't do any more shows this week because if you couldn't tell, I'm still kind of fighting off this flu. Not completely having fought it off yet.
well, Geek Nights will return to normal next week up until Anime Boston. We'll bring you a show about Mocha Comics probably again.
We'll be a little more high energy.
Yeah, it'll be good.
We're coming back. Just give us time.
We also got a lot of stuff saved up from the, all this time of no shows that we can bust out.
All right, kids. See you in a week. This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geek Nights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geek Nights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geek Nights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.
It's Tuesday, April 2nd, 2013. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. What the fuck?
Duh, you broke everything.
You're way louder than usual.
Woo.